What's going on, friends? Welcome to another episode of the Weather Show. I'm certified meteorologist Jonathan Kegges. Post in the comments where you're watching from or what you want to talk about. We have a lot to get to on April 15th. There's going to be a severe weather outbreak today. It's going to be a little different than the last few. Tornadoes are not the main threat. It's going to be a large hail threat. Then this system is going to slide up into the upper Midwest and bring some snow in April. Certainly not impossible, but we're starting to get on the back end of winter. Then we're going to talk about El Nino. El Nino has kind of stolen the headlines lately, and then it really did earlier in the week as NOAA officially issued a El Nino Watch, meaning that El Nino is going to be likely as we head into the summer and fall, and that is going to have impacts on the 2023 hurricane season. We also might get into some weather Twitter stuff. It's been wild lately. If any of you guys follow weather Twitter, there's some crazy outlandish stuff going on. I'm really thinking about hurricane-y stuff and that little system that came across the Gulf. There was some threads that caught my eye lately, so we can get into that if you would like. Again, if you were watching this stream live or taped, the recorded version, post in the comments where you're watching from or any questions you have, and I will get back to you on those. And if you want to stay updated this 2023 hurricane season before we get into this video, you have to hit subscribe. Please do that. I would love it. And as we watch this weather community grow, that would be amazing as well. All right, first things first, we'll get into some of the stuff in this video that I just mentioned, and then we're going to answer some questions or take some comments over. So again, post in the comment section where you are watching from. The first deal here is going to be this widespread severe weather threat. And the main threat is not going to be long track tornadoes, although the tornado threat is there. It's not zero for sure. We're going to have some supercells. But you see that big red bullseye there from northern Louisiana. If you are watching this or listening, this extends from northern Louisiana through a lot of central Arkansas into Missouri. This includes St. Louis. This includes Little Rock. And it's just north of us in Shreveport. We're talking some really, really big hail starting to pop as we get later into your Saturday afternoon. Again, if you're watching this in real time, if you are watching this live. So again, just keep that in mind as we go over the next few days or next several hours on the 15th. I want to show you now something kind of different. I want to show you what's called CAPE, or convective available potential energy. It's basically the fuel for these thunderstorms to work with. And if you are watching rather than listening, there is a nice big plume of this pink and purple kind of psychedelic color that extends well up through northern Missouri. That is basically where we are looking at the main big hail threat. I mean, we're talking like gargantuan hail, potential for baseballs and bigger, right smack dab through central Arkansas. And kind of the similar thing when you're talking about long track tornadoes. You want these, well, I mean, you don't want these, but for large hail, you want them to be isolated. You want the supercells to be isolated so they can take advantage of the entire atmosphere by themselves, and as they can fling those big ice chunks way up and have the updrafts be tilted and all that stuff to, again, get things moving as we go forward with the thunderstorm development. So again, just some crazy stuff likely going to happen out west for us, right in the nation's heartland and parts of the deep south. What's going on, Montana Jenny? It is great to see you on the live stream. Tuning in from, of course, Montana. Again, if you're just joining, post in the comments where you're watching from. So I want to give you a look here at future radar, and then we're going to get into some of the El Nino-y stuff. Because if you are into tropical meteorology, or if you live in the Caribbean or are planning on visit the Caribbean or live anywhere in a hurricane strike zone, you are going to find what I'm going to talk about in the next minute or so very interesting. At least I hope so anyway. So I just want to show you a future radar here to give you a timeline in Arkansas and Missouri, especially. That's where we are. That's where we're going to be talking about anyway. This is something that's primarily going to happen in the afternoon. This is around 4 or 5 o'clock, and you see that line of thunderstorms starting to get going here. That's right along that front. And then that line kind of expands. I really think, though, we got to get them isolated to get this really, really big hail threat that is being advertised out in this way. So, again, the more isolated in nature the cells are, the more intense those thunderstorms are going to be able to be, and then the bigger the hail. So we're going to watch and see what kind of crazy video and pictures come out of Arkansas, Missouri, as that big hail threat gets going. Indiana, we're going to be on the outside looking in. You mentioned that as well. Marginal risk for parts of Indiana as we go back again. There is that risk area, again, including really the western half, Indianapolis and points west. Again, we're going to be on the tail end of this as this system kind of winds down as it pushes off to the east. Indiana is on the map in the top corner there, and there's kind of that future radar. Certainly, the high-resolution radar really pulverizes a lot of that line before it crosses from Illinois into Indiana. Still, that chance is going to be there really because of the amount of wind energy. A couple thousand feet above your head, any heavier downpours really don't even need the thunder and lightning to get some damaging storms out there because there's a lot of wind energy above the surface. And I'll kind of fast forward to that now, the actual setup of this deal. And this is our big upper low. So I'm going to take this back, and this is really going to go into the next part of this video, the snow side. I mean, we're still talking about snow. Winter, it took forever to get here for a lot of the United States. And now all of a sudden it decides to show up when I think a lot of us are ready to put it behind us and move into spring. But nonetheless, Mother Nature don't care what we want or what you want. Hey, Mo, in Chicago, thanks so much for tuning in to the live stream. If you're watching this on the record as well, still post where you are tuning in from. We'd love to find out. And any questions you have, post those in the comments as well. We are going to get into it. Amanda, good to see you. Been a while from Central Tennessee. All right, so here's our deal as we get into Sunday afternoon. This big upper low kind of racing across. Notice these little kind of black triangles here at about 500 millibars. This is what we're looking here. This is where we are going to be watching for the potential for that. A lot of wind energy, again, a couple thousand feet above your head. And again, anything that gets going, per se, any downpour can mix that down to the surface. So again, you don't need to have this crazy radar signature on a day like this afternoon because of that wind energy. Now, the upper low itself is going to do something weird. It's just going to kind of lift up. Here is our upper low right on through the Great Lakes. Now, as it does that, it's going to kind of yank the surface low. I'll kind of play that out here for my friends in the upper Midwest, especially Wisconsin, and then to the western side of Michigan. Look at this. Talk about a crazy little burst of snow here. We could be talking a widespread 4 to 8 inches in central and western Wisconsin here. Potential for isolated more, especially where you see that darker blue. And then as we move this further out into Monday, this is Monday afternoon, that snow kind of extends into really most of Michigan, still snowing lightly in Wisconsin. But a couple of inches are going to be possible right along the Great Lakes, likely just a trace, if that, for our friends in and around Detroit, where we typically always seem to get hosed on winter these days. But certainly some festive flakes going to be flying in Detroit. Again, accumulating snow likely, maybe up to 1 to 3 inches of snow in Grand Rapids, and the potential for a little bit more. Nothing crazy. It's not cataclysmic by any means, but it'll impact your day on Monday. No doubt about that. There's some of the, this is the GFS snow totals. It might be a little aggressive in terms of the amount of snow. You see that stripe there of 11 to 12 inches. Certainly on an isolated scale, I think that's going to be possible in parts of central and western Wisconsin. But I think for the most part here, we're looking at a widespread 4 to 8 inches of rain. All right. I talked earlier here that we were going to get all up into El Nino. An El Nino watch was just issued by NOAA a couple days ago. They're now giving it an 81% shot, a greater than 80% shot for El Nino to develop by the summer and into the fall. So I want to show you here the model forecast, and almost every model is extremely bullish of at least a moderate El Nino developing by the peak of hurricane season. And if you are watching this rather than listening, you see this stripe of anomalously warm waters over the equatorial Pacific. That is El Nino. So we are likely going to have an El Nino develop to some degree for the peak of hurricane season. Now, the main question is, at least one of them when it comes to hurricanes this season is, A, how strong can this El Nino get? If you're unaware, during an El Nino year, it's typically a quote-unquote quieter season. Now, I'm going to go on a whole spiel about what that means. It's in the frequency. There are still ugly years in the United States and in the Caribbean, major hurricane landfalls in an El Nino year. So that's not what that means. It's not going to completely shut down the season. What this does, though, what this does mean is we are likely going to see, in a typical year, less storms. But again, it only takes one. That brings me to point number 2. So while we do have this developing El Nino in the Pacific, which does act as a deterrent for Atlantic storms, note all this orange in the tropical Atlantic. That is way above normal. It's already way above normal in the temperature department. And of course, the warmer the water, the stronger hurricanes get. That's where they draw their fuel. So there's going to be this battle between crazy warmth in the Atlantic to fuel the storms, and then increased wind shear in the upper levels of the atmosphere to kind of rip the storms apart. Colorado State University, I know it's Colorado, it's landlocked. What are they doing issuing outlooks? Well, they are one of the most respected agencies or entities when it comes to seasonal hurricane forecast or seasonal tropical weather forecast. They just came out with their report on Thursday. On their first, they do one, I think, once a month or once every other month leading up to hurricane season. And then through hurricane season, they do weekly updates and then as well. They are calling for a touch below normal in terms of number of storms. An average hurricane season consists of 14 named storms, 7 of those becoming hurricanes, 3 of those becoming major hurricanes, which is category 3 and above. They're calling for 13 named storms, 6 hurricanes, and 2 majors. Now, remember, if those 2 majors happen to hit land, it's a bad year. So that shows nothing, again, in terms of how bad and how impactful this is going to be. So I want to be clear about that it is always important that, especially if you live in hurricane-prone areas, even if there was one storm forecast, which there's not, to make sure that you are prepared for this hurricane season. Last year was extremely, extremely ugly. I want to show you one thing real quick, and then I'll get to some of the comments. Thank you guys for posting comments. If I have anybody watching, I don't have a lot of friends on the channel from the Caribbean. A lot of friends in the Caribbean watching. This is for the peak of hurricane season, August, September, October, the precipitation anomalies. Most models want a relatively speaking quiet Caribbean year. Notice all of this dry air. This is really where we see that increased wind shear in the upper levels. So, I mean, this is great news for the Caribbean. Again, if the shear backs off, if the dry air backs off, then it's game on at that time. We have to take this week by week, but certainly this is happening. The model is forecasting this because it likes the El Nino. And also, you notice all this green out here. That is also very typical of an El Nino year, with increased thunderstorm activity rolling off of South America and developing out there. It's typically way more active in the Eastern Pacific during an El Nino year. It's opposite. Also, you'll note here that it looks like we are going to see a likelihood of storms rolling off of Africa. So, see that green? So at least the anomaly once is forecasting anyway from a model perspective here during the peak, which is when the Cabo Verde season gets going. Cabo Verde Islands right there, and that's why we call it that, because these storms roll off of Africa and then kind of push off. We could have some very, very quick hitters here. They develop quickly, and then there might be like a wall of sheer and dry air, and then it might be the Caribbean graveyard, so to speak. That would be awesome. That we could, I mean, again, this is all we're going to try to fine tune as things become a little more clear, and we try to figure out. We've got this jet fuel in the Atlantic fueling these storms, but then that deterrent in the increased wind shear due to El-Nino coming into play. I want to show you another model forecast again, because you can't just look at one model, especially climate models. Same kind of deal here, except, this is what we would have to watch out for. Certainly, most of the Caribbean still dry. It wants to kind of eject storms a little further north. And then we have increased precip. Now, that would not be good right in here, because during the peak of hurricane season, it wants increased precip in and around Florida, in and around the Bahamas, and then the northern side of the Caribbean. So that's what we would be watching for. Certainly, this could also play a role in our daily sea breeze thunderstorms that gets going. It's always wet in Florida, but this would be something interesting to watch. Early on, I will say, we do have a kind of a favorable pattern. If we did get early season storms to develop, they might be able to hit close to home in the mid-Atlantic in Southeast. So that will be something as well. And as just mentioned, we will have the opportunity to see those. It does look wet for Florida. All right, I'm going to start going through comments. We will see. It looks like the Northeast might be an interesting spot this year for some tropical weather. Amanda says that she wishes that she was in the Caribbean. I saw a comment earlier here from Amanda. She says, random question. Is it possible to rain without clouds? I know it sounds weird, but I can send you the video on Twitter. It was raining at my brother's house with no clouds. It is. So there's a couple of reasons why that could happen. The one that pops into my head the first is that when you have thunderstorms that have these updrafts that are kind of vigorously forcing rain up, sometimes they kind of go on out of the cloud. So there's a thunderstorm nearby, but the updrafts of those thunderstorms are kind of pushing those raindrops up and then pushing them away from the thunderstorm. So yeah, it can be clear where you are, and then kind of rain on you, even though you can see blue sky. There might be a thunderstorm cloud a little further away from you that is producing that, but that updraft is kind of forcing that rain out of here. Ethan says, so we have some severe weather tomorrow in Central Florida. We do. I'm actually working the evening shift tomorrow for a change, but normally on mornings. So I'll be streaming live on the News 6 YouTube page and on Facebook and stuff, and tracking those storms. It looks like I-4 and south. So Ethan, where you are, I think you're certainly going to have the threat. We're in a marginal risk in Central Florida for severe weather on the 16th of April, but I think that focus is going to be kind of along and southeast of I-4. So you're going to be certainly in that. It's not crazy, but it's not entirely too crazy. But let me switch the since I have Ethan on and asking about the severe weather threat tomorrow, I'm going to pull up the high resolution radar. The 12Z run of the high res kind of washes it out a lot. We get some cloud debris coming in early and it keeps us cloudy. But I think here they might fine tune that risk area, but I really think right in here, I mean, Marion County, Jacksonville, Palm Coast, I think we're going to be on the drier side, but we're going to certainly have that opportunity south and east of Orlando, closer to where you are. So stay tuned for that as well. So there's more. So there is more of that. The tornado threat, it's not sky high in Little Rock. Let me go back. It's not zero. So let's go deep into this. Let's see if we can get into our SQT. And let's see, and it's kind of cut off with my hodograph here. But right off the bat, we have good winds out of the southwest aloft to help generate wind shear. We have winds decently strong out of the south and southeast as well. So we have that rolling motion just like that. So that's going to be able to help to get some supercells going. The one thing I see already, let me make sure I'm on. That is 23Z. Let me back this up a little bit. The one thing I see right off the bat, and we'd have to go into some crazy deep analysis for the tornado risk here, but there is a lot of dry air here. There is a lot of, so there's going to be a really high LCL, lifting condensation level. When that cloud base is high, it's a little bit harder for the tornadoes to develop. That's why I don't think that, certainly the tornado threat is there. But the highest threat today is going to be the pretty big hail, because we do have a lot of CAPE. Let me look to see what. So, and there it is. Let me go back to my other thing to show you on pivotal weather here. Notice you saw that hatched area. That was for the hail threat. This is the tornado threat. So they have it at a 5% shot. So as we just did that quick analysis there, looking, it didn't scream crazy tornado day. Now, if one supercell got a little aggressive, it could certainly produce a tornado, and that risk is there. It's not zero, but I don't think we're looking at an outbreak day by any means, if that answers your question. So I hope that helped on that front. Keep the comments coming. As well. I know there were a few other. All right, so my friend, let me get back to the comments. All right, so I apologize. I'm trying to learn a little bit of Spanish because we had so many good conversations in hurricane season last year in the Caribbean, and I want to make sure that I can be there for you guys and you can understand what I'm saying. Basically, I just did a quick Google Translate here, and he's asking about, he or she, I'm not entirely sure, but is asking about the Lesser Antilles. I will show this model, and again, for the most part, the Caribbean. Here we go. Let me switch back to different views real quick. Once drier than normal. That's just one model. But then as we get into the northern side of the Antilles on another model towards Puerto Rico, it's a little wetter than normal. So if you're on the northern side of the Lesser Antilles, I think there's a shot. More often than not, I think there's going to be a lot of detrimental weather to hurricanes and tropical systems. But if there's going to be a spot where I think we might be able to sneak stuff in, it could be on the northern side of the Antilles during the peak of hurricane season. But it's also during the peak of hurricane season that we're going to be able to increase the wind shear and hopefully kind of tear these apart a little bit. Okay, let me know if you can understand me as well. That would be helpful. And I apologize for not knowing Spanish, but I love that we're having this conversation, and I'm going to do my best to learn some for hurricane season so that we can get this at times critical information out. But basically, his next question was about hearing about Category 5s in the Pacific. There I don't know if it officially reached Cat 5. It was close, but that was towards Australia. I think it did for a brief second. I think it made landfall as a Category 4 on the Saffir-Simpson scale, but I think it briefly touched Category 5. So that is typically the Pacific is more active in an El Nino year, if you're asking about that. In the Atlantic Basin, Category 6 does not exist. So there's no such thing as a Category 6. So there's none on that. The highest is a Category 5, number 5. But I mean, once you get, I mean, any hurricane is bad, especially if you're on an island and can't get anywhere. But certainly that major hurricane status starts at Category 3 and above. So really, those are the bad ones. Those major hurricanes, when you get 111 mile per hour and above, that's what constitutes a Category 3 hurricane. Amanda says that Tennessee hasn't been getting bad weather lately. Hopefully it stays that way. It looks like we've tried to focus some of that bad weather back to the plains, which is typical for this time of the year. Let me see here. Hey, SFJ Squad again. Good to see you as well. Absolutely. And we're trying to do this every 11 o'clock, every Saturday at 11 o'clock. We're calling it the Weather Show. Okay, so we'd love to have the interaction with you guys as well, whether you're watching this live or eventually going to watch the record here. Max, I don't know if you're still on. What does El Nino mean for severe weather in the Midwest and Great Lakes? Well, typically, we'll start with La Nina. La Nina tends to focus the severe weather down in here because we have the active jet stream kind of rolling across the northern tier of the country. In an El Nino year, we have that active subtropical jet. So typically, once we get El Nino, once we get into severe weather season, like the fall, Florida becomes up. We have like a mini severe weather season in Florida when we get into El Nino. So if we hold El Nino for Florida, by the time we get into fall and especially winter, that's whenever we could have, that's our big tornado producing. That's where we have our big kind of supercell thunderstorm tornado producing years, is when we have El Nino continue, when we get those cold fronts coming through because we introduce that wind shear. But for the upper Midwest, we typically have the active weather out here. We can get severe weather in the, I think you said plains. Oh yeah, weather in the Midwest and Great Lakes area. We would typically see more of that wind shear to help really bad weather in a La Nina year. So our worst stuff is kind of what we had. Whoops, just drawing stuff everywhere now on the telestration. There we go. Back to normal. So I mentioned earlier that I wanted to talk about weather Twitter. It's crazy out there, man. Yo, I saw a conversation yesterday, and I know that he was kidding, I think, but he mentioned about a Category 2 hurricane making landfall because on satellite, to the untrained eye, it would look like there was a hurricane that came ashore on the Gulf Coast. We talked about this last week on the Weather Show. The April, whatever 7 days ago was. I haven't had enough coffee. And basically, he was telling people, oh, I'm just kidding. All right, you can't do that. Like, that's serious stuff. And people that may have seen that may have actually gone and believed that there was a Category 2 hurricane in the Deep South yesterday. Okay, and this is the part of the problem I have. I get it, and he was yelling back at people, oh, I'm just having fun. No. There's got to be a certain level of responsibility if you're going to do that. And Ali mentions it here, whether Twitter is out of control. It's crazy. Everybody's angry at each other. The chasers have gone crazy. I don't know if you've seen video lately of chasers speeding around, getting hit by tornadoes, crashing into other people. That is out of control, and then they're blatantly posting it on social media. Hey, we just got hit by a tornado. Okay, that's not good. You're lucky to be alive, my friend. So there's a lot of that going on right now. This is about the time, and I preach this all the time. If you followed me long enough, and if you haven't, hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you on board. But yo, come on. Yesterday was not a Category 2 hurricane. I don't care if you were joking or not. You don't say that. Because you lose credibility if you're trying to build it. And I mean that if you happen to be tuning into this live stream. It's insane how much that is happening. Allie brings up a point. If you're listening to this or going to watch the recorded version, she says the sad part is that many will ignore their local Mets to watch the Twitter YouTube Mets. That is very, very true. And she puts Mets in quotation marks. And there are a few that do a good job, especially in times of severe weather. I think I harped on this before once that I was watching somebody's severe coverage. I'll keep their name out of it. But they were yelling at the weather service for not issuing a tornado warning on a cell that to them looked like it was rotating. It was not. Or at least the rotation was very broad, and it was not, from a radar perspective, ready to produce. But they were sitting there calling out the weather service because there was no warning on that cell. Now, we do that a lot here. We talk about, okay, we don't call out the weather service. Okay, like, I will never, ever do that because those are the smartest people when it comes to meteorology. Read one of their weather discussions, and I'm telling you, okay? So, number one, that's a no-no. Number two, when we do that, it's okay. We're gonna see this, and the weather service does likely issue on that. But you can't have an untrained person bark up a tree when it comes to tornado warnings and it not produce a tornado or not produce a tornado warning, because that just does a crazy disservice out there. It's nuts out there. It's the world has gone crazy, and weather Twitter has followed it. They are. Mo brings up a good point here. Sadly, I say that they are doing it for ratings. Absolutely. I say this all the time. I'd rather have 5 people watching and them get good information from me than me have 10,000 people and just give it hype and not being able to give that information. And I mean that, because if you've read my about section, that's why I started a YouTube channel, because it was just getting out of control. Again, there's a lot of people on there that want to be meteorologists and are starting out young and getting on here and doing it. That's great. I love that. I love the passion behind it. But it's another level whenever there is extremely critical life-saving information on the line. And I know that sounds extreme, but you've seen some of the tornadoes that we've had, unfortunately, go across the country. We've seen some of the hurricanes out there as well. And that is one of the reasons why, well, there's more than one reason why I'm never going to hype anything for ratings. I'm in Florida. I'm in Orlando. We got hit by 2 hurricanes last year. And, of course, hurricane season's right around the corner. It's like 6 weeks away, unfortunately. There's a lot of hurricane anxiety out there. I mean, it was a rough year last year. And then you have people coming out like major storm. There were people calling this, again, a hurricane, that a hurricane was going to hit Louisiana last week. Didn't happen. Now I'm just getting on my soapbox, but thank you for letting me do that. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and thank you, Mo. Hey, Robert, what's going on, my friend? So I hope that you found this kind of mini rant exciting. I wonder if it was the same person. Maybe his name starts with an M. Because that's the feed that I came across yesterday, and then said it was a joke, and then was defending it, and then you can't do that, because if you're just scrolling through like, wait, there's a hurricane? Like, no, not everybody knows that there is a difference. And then, all right, one more thing. There were people saying, how is this not a hurricane? How is this not a hurricane? It looks like one, like the Hurricane Center missed this one. Absolutely not. And this is why it's important to know how the difference between a mid-latitude cyclone, which is what this thing is, okay, that's going to be developed, if I have my, which is this is a mid-latitude cyclone. It is a cold core system brought on by differences in temperature in the atmosphere, whereas tropical systems, tropical cyclones, are warmed core. So yeah, a mid-latitude cyclone like this, which is a storm in the mid-latitudes, can produce a lot of damage. Okay, they do, but they're not tropical. And that's a problem that people, again, were calling out the Hurricane Center on that feed, on that person's feed, and he was fueling that fire, that misinformation. I don't care if he was joking or not. At that point, he has fed the beast, and people ultimately believed that was a hurricane. And I hope he tunes into this because it's inappropriate. Allie says, Massachusetts has not been hit by a hurricane in 32 years, and last year, Weather Twitter was convinced we were going to get hit. We got a depression. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be really, really right now. The water temperature is really warm, so if it's going to do it, I've got to look a little closer at the steering current. That's going to be the last kind of thing here, and we got to see how this goes. And I do think early on in the year, the way that the subtropical ridge is kind of positioned, like we will have an opportunity for these things to come in, and maybe before the El Nino develops, but we will see. I do think I've seen some modeling that shows the placement of the subtropical ridge will tend to kind of fling these out to sea a little bit more as we get deeper into hurricane season. That's not gospel, but that's some of the stuff that I've been yeah, see, that's not cool. Hey Bobby girl, good to see you on the live stream. East Tennessee to Oklahoma. Well, let's take this back here. East Tennessee to Oklahoma. So here's the stuff that's coming today. So they might have some kind of rough weather. I don't know what time that they are going to be getting there, but the worst of the weather they're going to see is probably that's overnight. So that's going to be the worst. No, stop. I hate when I hit start and then the loop just keeps on going and I can't stop it. So they could run into a little bit of bad weather if they're driving through Arkansas and Missouri, which obviously they have to do that a little bit later this afternoon. I'm not sure what time of arrival that they are planning on getting there, but they're going to have to drive through a little bit of thunderstorms. Some of those could be a little nasty with some large hail and some pretty heavy rainfall. So just make sure they are aware. They might have to kind of pull over a little bit and let those storms pass as they get into like western Tennessee, Arkansas. Here's a better high resolution look. That is about 5 o'clock Eastern, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So by 10 o'clock, that line is in western Tennessee. And then for Amanda, I know she's in central Tennessee. Right in there. That's a big circle. But that line kind of falls apart a little bit, and you just have some scattered downpour. So things should be relatively quiet for you. Maybe a rumble of thunder, but nothing damaging looks to be coming your direction. Alrighty, guys. Hey, this has been a great conversation. Thank you guys so much. If you have any questions on anything we talked about and more, post them in the comments, and I will get back to them even after this feed is over. If you enjoyed the conversation that we had today, and this is what this channel is about. It's about the conversations, and it's about talking science and meteorology and all of that nerdy stuff that I think a lot of people on this channel like, and just keeping you updated and getting feedback and getting your thoughts too, because we all love the weather. Hit subscribe. I would love it to have you kind of hang out with us and to get updates through the week. And then, of course, hopping on here with the weather show. We do it live at 11 o'clock on Saturdays. I'm going to start posting in the community page sometime in the middle of the week, I think, to kind of get your gauge on what you want to talk about, to get the questions ahead of time and then answer those questions on here too. in addition to some of the live comments coming in so that we can have a better basis of what you guys want to talk about on the show. Because this is all about you guys. I'm just rambling, as you've heard for the last however many minutes we've been on here. But just want to thank you. Hey, Mark, I don't know. I still have coffee right here. I still think it's morning. I'm all kinds of confused as well. Good to see you as well, my friend. It's been a while. Good to see you. And Mark says, oops, afternoon. I know. Hey, I'm still trying to wake up. Worked early this morning. So this is my third cup of coffee. So I'm wired. It's weird to be like highly caffeinated and tired at the same time. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. But anyway, thank you guys a ton for tuning in. If you like this conversation, please hit subscribe. Please hit that thumbs up button. All right. Amanda's been up since 3, so she's been almost an all-nighter too. Please hit subscribe. Again, if you want to stay updated this hurricane season without all the garbage, you've come to the right place. So we're going to break it down scientifically, meteorologically, and we're going to have that conversation because that's what it's all about. Be aware of weather Twitter. It's crazy out there. All right, guys. I'll catch you next time. Keep posting in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you, Allie. Also, congratulations to the Bruins. Breaking the record. My Penguins did not make it. First time in 16 years. Again, we also talk a little sports on this channel. When we're live anyway. Not during the week, but when we're live, we talk about anything. Penguins missed the playoffs for the first time in 16 years. And then we cleaned house with our upper management. So it's going to be weird, but at least I won't have a heart attack. Like, I feel relieved. Is that weird? I feel relieved because as anybody that's a hockey fan in the Stanley Cup playoffs know, you can't have a weak heart because it will kill you. That's being a little dramatic, but man, especially when those games go to overtime, holy cow. Holy cow. Thank you, and good luck. We'll talk before those playoff rounds start. I guess they start pretty soon, huh? But anyway, Amanda likes the Penguins because of the name. Just 2 days away. It's awesome. It's a great time, and there's nothing better. There is nothing better than playing hockey in June. There's just something about it. It's just the coolest thing. It's 90 degrees outside. Well, it's 90 in Florida right now, but I digress. And you're playing hockey. Guess it was like 90 in the Northeast yesterday too. So it's been crazy hot. Anyway, now I'm rambling, and this tends to happen as well. Thank you guys a ton for tuning in. We will catch you along the way this week with the videos, and we'll be back on here live. I believe I can be live next week. I got to check my schedule, but I'll let you know in the community section if I can hop on or not. And again, I'll ask for comments or questions in the community. You can post those there, and then we can touch on anything that you want to talk about. Mark says it's 80 in Michigan, and it's about to snow there on Monday. But with it being 80, it's going to be hard for it to stick on the roads. Amanda says, it looks like there's bacon on my shirt. It's from Haleakala National Park. And that's their little thing out in Hawaii. I was out there for my honeymoon. Really cool place. If you guys ever get to go to there, if anybody loves the national parks, that's my jam, the national parks. There are a couple of cool ones out in Hawaii. I know it's not the most accessible place to go to. Won't be going back for a very long time, but it's gorgeous out there. It's unreal. It is unreal. Mark, if you're unaware, see, this is what happens too. If you come to stick around for a little bit, and if you subscribe, you'll know I think I said bye like 10 minutes ago, and here we go because we keep on getting some good questions. But just want to make sure Mark knows. I'm just going to take this back a little bit and show him the timeline here in Michigan. That's going to be about 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And I believe you're right around the Grand Rapids area, correct? Or at least in western Michigan. It's been a while since we talked about snow in Michigan. Amanda says she likes the long goodbyes. This is when I start to get crazy though, so I say weird things whenever after I say goodbye because then I start rambling. Um, okay, so Mark is over there. Yeah, so what I mean, I think a general 1 to 3 inches could come your way, Mark. Especially enhanced by the lake a little bit. Now the ground has been super warm, so it might not look like that as well. But there is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, April 17th, and there's at least snow coming down. So it is crazy. Alrighty, guys. Hey, this has been awesome. Again, it was great seeing everybody. Some of the people I haven't seen in quite some time. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're just finding us for the first time, let me know. Post that in the comments. Give this a thumbs up. Hit subscribe. We would love to have you in this amazing weather community. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks so much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.